you deal with pain and chronic pain? I know for myself that if I have a toothache or if something's bothering me, I have my knees sore, I can't think of anything else except the pain within my body. But how do you deal with actual chronic pain? Is there a way? And you know what, you can go and get medication, Advil, whatever you do, but is there perhaps a deeper meaning to the pain? Today I've got a beautiful guest, Dr. Howard Schubiner. And Dr. Howard Schubiner has a beautiful theory, and he's been working for many years with the mind, body, and medicine. So he's also written a whole lot of articles and books. But you know what? I think we need to speak to Dr. Howard Schubiner himself and let him tell us how he came to this and what caused him to start all these experimentations and get to the theory that he's come to. Hello, Dr. Howard. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor and a privilege. Before we go into your, I'd like to know a bit about your story. How did you start all? How did you get into chronic pain? Chronic pain theory or chronic pain experimentation. I mean, I know that you're a physician, but where did this start?
Well, most physicians actually don't want to work with people with chronic pain because it's an area that's difficult. And people with chronic pain often don't get better or have problems and are difficult and are depressed themselves, and it can be depressing for the physicians. Mm. So I was never really interested in that area of medicine for many years. I was a doctor for roughly 20 years before I got into this field. And I was doing different aspects of medicine. I was working at a university and doing research and doing a variety of other things. But around 2002, someone suggested I read a book by Dr. John Sarno, S-A-R-N-O. And Dr. Sarno had been writing about this since the 1980s. And his theory was that a lot of people with chronic pain actually don't have a disease in their body to account for the pain, but actually the pain is being generated by the brain in response to stressful life situations. And that's a theory that most doctors don't agree with, don't believe, don't understand, have never heard of, basically. But Dr. Sarno, turned out he was helping not hundreds, but thousands of people get out of, not just manage their pain, which is the dominant way medicine deals with chronic pain, is just to manage it with medications or injections or even surgery, but helping people eliminate their pain. And so anyway, someone suggested I read one of his books in 2002, and I did, and I was kind of intrigued, and I was at a crossroads in my career, and I went to work with him for a while. And I came back to my hospital and I said, I want to set up a little practice and see if I can help people. And that's what I did. So it was kind of a serendipitous thing, but the more I saw people and the more I talked to them and the more I understood and the more I read about the science of pain and the science of the brain, it's led out to just a whole career for me. And it's been extremely satisfying and gratifying to not help people just manage their pain, but actually help them resolve their pain.
Now that's very exciting. So how do you start with this whole thing? So how do you know where the pain originates? Do you do some kind of therapy, to put it in inverted commas, or MRIs? What do you do?
Yeah, well, we have a process, an assessment process that starts with standard medical process, because everyone needs to have good medical care. And certainly some people with acute pain or even chronic pain can have a structural problem in the body to account for it. They may have an infection in their appendix. They may have an abscess. They may have a tumor. They may have an autoimmune disorder or a vasculitis or a whole variety of illnesses that require biomedical treatment. But it turns out when you look closely at people who have chronic pain, most of them do not have a biomedical reason for that. And we know that, number one, because they've had a lot of testing. They've had x-rays and MRIs and blood tests, and they've seen numerous physicians, and they haven't been able to find a medical problem for causing it. And then we have a secondary type of assessment where we take time with people and talk to them about the characteristics of their pain. Where is it? When did it start? How did it start? Did it start with an injury? Well, frequently a pain will start with an injury, but the injury heals and the pain continues for years. And when we look at that, we say, well, do we think somehow the injury didn't heal? That's very unlikely. Talked about just last week, I was talking to a young woman who had a head injury, and she had a lot of pain, headache pain after the head injury and a concussion. And it lasted for a few weeks and then a few months and then a couple of years. And the head injury had healed, but she was still having all this pain, and the pain was actually getting worse rather than getting better. Then by chance, she went on vacation to Hawaii, and the pain completely turned off while she was there. And when she came back to her job in Southern California, the pain came back again. And she was smart enough to realize, that's very interesting. That tells me something. So we probe, and she's headache-free now. And so we probe deeply to look at, has the pain been spreading over time? Does it turn on and off? Does it shift from one part of the body to another part of the body during the course of the day or the week? Is it triggered by stress? Is it triggered by the weather? Is it triggered by lights or sounds or foods? And so we have all these criteria that we use. And we just published a research paper in the Journal of Pain in the last month or so, where we analyzed 222 people who had chronic back pain. And all of their MRIs were abnormal. It turns out that MRIs are abnormal in healthy people. As people get older, their MRI becomes abnormal, but it's called graying of the vertebrae, like graying of the hair. Not it's normal aging. If you went to a doctor and he said, I said I have headaches, and he said, well, look, you've got all this gray hair. Of course you have headaches. It would be ridiculous. But that's exactly what we're doing in the medical profession by looking at these mild abnormalities on MRI, degenerative disc disease, bulging discs, facet arthritis, spondylolisthesis, stenosis, all these things that are there. And 80% of 50-year-olds have this. 40% of 30-year-olds, 30% of 30-year-olds have these findings without any pain. So anyway, we use all these criteria. And in the study of the 222 people with chronic back pain, we determined that 88% of them did not have a structural problem in their back to account for the pain. I mean, that's a shocking number because
it is.
Anybody who's listening to this knows somebody who's had back pain. And they know people who have back pain who've been to the doctor. And the doctor's got an MRI, and the doctor says, oh, here's the cause of your pain. And this would be 99% of the time, doctors would say, your back pain is structural. And here we are talking about chronic pain. I'm not talking about acute pain now where somebody has an injury or car accident. And we're saying that almost 90% are non-structural. But it turns out if you look at headaches, tension, migraine headaches, the vast majority, 90+% of people with headaches don't have a disease in the head or their sinuses or their tooth or their brain. They have what we call primary pain, which means, in our view, that it's coming from the brain. Most people with abdominal pain, pelvic pain, do not have a structural problem. And so this awareness is revolutionary and very different from what most doctors would say or think, and most people would say or think or even imagine. And we're not saying it's all in people's heads, okay? It's not imaginary pain. It's real pain, because all pain is real. It turns
Yes.
out that when you touch a hot stove, it's not your finger causing pain. It's actually because
Yes,
you
right.
can have an injury and have no pain at all. If you can have an injury and have no pain at all, that tells us the way the brain works is the brain has a danger signal and alerts us. And you can have pain in the absence of an injury. And so we've written about this, and it's in our books. There's a Coursera course that I've developed. It's a free course that people can learn all about these theories of how the brain works. And like I say, it's just revolutionary. So we can tell the vast majority of the time if someone's pain is coming from a biomedical problem or if it's coming from what we call learned neural circuits in the brain that, just like any learned behavior, can become unlearned.
I love that. You just took the question out of my mouth, because I was just going to say it sounds like it's a learned response. So, of course, we can just unlearn it and change the synapses or the neural pathways in the brain. So,
Exactly. If someone has migraine headaches that are triggered by the weather or triggered by wine, what they want to do is, I should never drink any wine because I'll get a headache, or I should hide myself in the house if the weather changes. We think the opposite. We want you to teach your brain that wine is safe. Teach your brain that the weather is not damaging you, it's just triggering these pathways. And then they can have freedom.
I love that. But I'd like to take it a step further, because I'm thinking if you can train the brain to say wine triggers migraines or whatever, or the weather, like we were saying, what if you take it further and you say, well, hey, why do I need the sun? Why do you think in some past experience does the sun trigger a headache or a migraine? Would you go that further back, and would that change the whole theory or the way you look at a patient?
Well, the other thing that we do is we spend a lot of time with people and talk to them and learn about their life and learn what makes them tick and what experiences they've had. And so when you think of the brain as having a danger signal, if you're riding on the highway and a car swerves towards you, your danger signal is going to kick in and you're going to immediately take action and swerve out of the way. And our danger signals have been learned throughout our life. If you grow up having a very critical father, let's say, and then you're in your 20s or 30s and you get a very critical boss, your danger signal is going to be very sensitive to that because it has learned criticism is danger. Criticism is danger from a very early age. If you had parents who divorced and a parent left and abandoned you, so to speak, when you're in a relationship later in life and somebody leaves you, a romantic partner leaves you, you feel abandoned. And that danger signal in the brain needs to alert us. Just like if the car is swerving toward you, you get a huge rush of adrenaline and anxiety because the danger signal is warning you there's danger. When you have emotional danger, the emotional danger triggers the same parts of the brain as does a physical injury. And an emotional danger can cause stomach pain, headache, back pain, pelvic pain, all sorts of other symptoms. And of course, it can cause anxiety. It can cause depression or fatigue. It can cause insomnia. And everyone knows that when you have a stressful day, you may get a headache. Everyone knows when you have a stressful time, you may have trouble sleeping. Everyone knows that you may feel anxious or on edge when you're in a stressful situation. And it's just the brain's way of alerting us. It's not our enemy. It's not there to torment us. It's there to help us and alert us to something that's going on in our life that we need to address or deal with better.
Yes, I love that. So it's just like an awareness. And I just want to also turn this a bit. What if you in a situation and you have, say, your father abandoned you when you were 5 or whatever, and obviously when you get into the situation, like you were saying, into a relationship, is it at some point where you'd be the first one to run away so that you can avoid the pain of abandonment? And then from there, would that cause, because is that possible to cause this traumatic chronic pain within you, whatever it may be? I don't know, heartache perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, people who've been hurt in their life by being abandoned become afraid of intimacy, become afraid of commitment, because they feel they're going to get hurt again, and that can affect their life. And when they get in that situation where they're very attracted to somebody, they want to be with them, but they're fearful that they may get hurt, there's conflict in their brain. That conflict can lead to pain. You see a lot of people who are in the business world. Well, they have the same kinds of conflicts where they're trying to make a deal, but they're fearful it may not work out. There's a lot of money at stake. They don't want to disappoint certain people. They put a lot of pressure on themselves. They're very high achieving. They're very perfectionistic. And in those situations, I'm sure people listening to this have recognized that they or people they know have developed head pain or backache or stomach pain or anxiety. And so it's just a normal part of how our brain works.
So how would you suggest someone would deal with this? Because, like you say, a lot of people, if they have heartache within a relationship, or they have heartache with family or friends or whatever it is, it can internalize and show up as heart disease, for example. How would you suggest people could prevent it getting to that point? So if you feel that your heart is sore, and you're aware of what's happening in your life, how do you help the brain to feel safe?
Well, there's two parts to that question, and it's a great question. On one level, we're always human. So no matter how much we understand about the mind-body connection, and no matter how much we work with ourselves and try to remain calm and try to deal with situations better and learn how to be resilient to stress and recognize that we can handle stress and help to feel our emotions instead of stuffing them down. This is a big important thing that we teach people to do, is how to feel their emotions and express them in safe and healthy ways. We can talk more about that later. But all those things can prevent people from getting reactions in their body due to stress. But everyone is human, and people will have reactions due to stress because they're human. Their brain will act in that way. And so once there is a reaction, if they're starting to get chest pain, back pain, headache, stomach pain, or whatever, obviously the first step is to make sure they're not having a heart attack. They're not having some horrible disease that needs medical treatment. Yes. Usually that's pretty easy to figure out. But once that's figured out, then the most important thing is to recognize, I'm not damaged here. This is a reaction from my brain. What is it calling me to do? What's the message here? Is my brain telling me I need to take more time off and take better care of myself, balance my work and my life? Is my brain telling me that that I'll be fine once once the deal is wrapped up? Is my brain telling me I need to put a little less pressure on myself and have a little time for myself? Is my brain telling me, what? So that changes the whole situation of saying, I've got headache. I'll just take more Advil. I'll just take more Tylenol. I'll just, find new medications, other medications. Well, and if that works, fine. But if there's a meaning in it, a message in it, and if they can calm their brain. So for example, you're at the end of a busy day and your head starts to hurt. You can stop, take some deep breaths and say to your brain, I'm okay. All right, there's nothing wrong. I can handle this. You're treating your brain like you would a scared child, because your brain is just scared. It's fear. That's what your podcast is about, is fear. And the underlying cause of these symptoms in the brain is an internalized fear that you're going to be left behind, or you're going to lose, or you're going to be hurt, or you're going to be rejected, or whatever it is.
Mm.
And this is how human beings are created. We survived on this earth as Homo sapiens because we worked together in clans and groups.
Yeah.
So getting kicked out of the group is like a death sentence.
Mm.
Why would you get kicked out of a group back in cave people times if you did something wrong? You beat up somebody or killed somebody or slept with somebody's wife or whatever it is, you did something wrong. And so the emotional shaming and getting kicked out of the clan, being rejected, is a very deep thing because it's like a death sentence
Yes.
back in our evolutionary history.
Yes, thank you. I just thinking about how because of the internet and things have changed so much, especially since COVID, life has changed, and a lot of people are isolated. I saw a study that's become quite a prevalent, and of course it increases the suicide rate and the depression rate and all those things. How does that relate to what we were speaking about, and how can people deal with that? Because it's very easy. Again, it's almost like being kicked out of a clan and not being. I think everyone is like isolated. They don't even belong to clans anymore. So how do we fix that point?
Yeah, I mean, there's two basic needs that people have. One is agency, independence, being able to act and master what they're doing and have what they do have meaning and purpose, stand up for themselves, be heard, be seen, be listened to. And the other major thing people need is connection and being trusting and being intimate and being vulnerable with people. And if you have one without the other, you're really missing out on feeling safe and feeling secure in your life. And so if people are missing out on the connection side, on the vulnerability and trust side, it's critical to recognize that, because if someone gets fatigued or depressed or having pain, like I say, there's a meaning. Maybe the meaning is they need other people that they can relate to and trust and connect to. And that's a critical need. And so therefore now the pain that they're having becomes a gift rather than a problem. And the gift is to point them to what do they need. So how do you build and how do you find connection, in the world? Well, you work at it. I mean, you take it seriously. You have to find who you can connect to. And most people start with their families. And some people have families that are very difficult and make things hard. And maybe there's somebody in the family that they can connect to. Maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's a sibling, but not the other sibling, etc. And the connections can occur in a whole host of ways. When I go to my exercise class at the gym, I'm connecting to the people there every day. Little ways, just little ways, but it's so meaningful and so valuable. And how we take time in the business world, if people are on Zoom meetings all the time, there's no room for connection. There's no time to get to know the people that you're working with. Because when you work with people, it's not just about the work, it's about the relationship. And people who foster good relationships, bosses who foster good relationships are better bosses. Their employees are more productive because they're fostering solid and caring relationships. So it's helpful for everybody to have those.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Howard. And I'd also like to say, so if we can foster those relationships and create that community, have you found that again the chronic pain is reduced in some way?
Yeah, I mean, the pain will go away when it's not needed anymore.
Yes.
And so if the message of what the pain is telling us is to do something. I saw a woman who was in her second very abusive marriage, couldn't speak, couldn't choose the food that she ate, was very overweight, wanted to lose weight, wanted to change her diet. Her husband wouldn't let her, her family wouldn't let her. She was having horrible migraines, horrible pain. She could barely walk. And when she finally got into therapy, after 3 years, she decided she had to leave. When she left, she was driving her out of the city to go live somewhere near her grown children. Her migraines completely disappeared as she left the city. So yes, there's a variety of methods that we use to help people with chronic pain. This is one of them. It's making changes in your life that you need to make. The second one is treating yourself in ways that you need to treat yourself. A lot of people are hard on themselves. They're very self-critical or harsh. They blame themselves. They feel guilty. They worry about everybody else and never say no and never put themselves first. If that's what the pain is speaking to, then that can change, and that can make a big difference. The third thing is people can change how they relate to the sensations themselves. What happens is people get pain and then they fear the pain. They focus on it. They're working hard to push it, to fight it. They get frustrated by it. All these things actually make it worse. It's a vicious spiral. And we call it pain, fear, pain cycle. And so when you take away the fear of the pain, when you take away the, like you think, break fear, right? When break fear, find freedom. And that's what this is. You break the fear of the pain, and the pain will go away. And we see this all the time. So that's a model, and that therapy has a name. We call it pain reprocessing therapy. And this has been studied in randomized controlled trials, showing that it's more effective than standard psychological treatments for pain. And then the final, if I'll just tell you the final thing, and then you can go wherever you want. But the final part of the treatment is called emotional awareness and expression therapy. This is a therapy we developed that comes out of many other therapies. But the idea is to take feelings and express them in safe and healthy ways as opposed to holding them in. A lot of times people live holding grudges, carrying low-level anger at their neighbor or their spouse or their boss or whoever. And this low-level anger just at some point turns into chronic pain or depression or fatigue, etc. Because the brain is protecting them. If you're having difficulty at work with a colleague, your brain doesn't want you to go to work.
Yes.
So it'll give you pain. So you don't stay in bed. It's trying to protect you. And so this model is to help connect to the feelings themselves, to allow the feelings of anger, not to create violence in the world, definitely not, but to allow the feeling of anger to be there, and then to express the anger in safe and healthy ways. And one of the ways we do this is in our imagination. There was a guy in the hospital who screamed and yelled at me for 20 minutes in a public meeting, humiliating me. And I was just so angry. I wanted to slash his tires, but that would not be a wise move. But I came back to my office and in my head, I screamed at him and I imagined smashing his head into my desk over and over again until his nose was broken and his teeth were falling out. He had to walk in the hospital with bandages, humiliating him. And then I could let go of that anger, because holding on to that anger is only going to harm me. So I expressed it in a safe and healthy way. And then I moved past the anger to go to sadness and connection and other feelings. And I developed pity for him because he's a jerk, right? Who would want to be him?
Yeah.
So I was able to process this emotionally in ways that we teach, so that it won't develop into pain.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love that. And you were speaking, I remember one of the best things for me is to scream in a pillow.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's also something that you do. As you were speaking about, I think it was the first therapy that you use. One of my favorite. I don't know who said this. I can't give it to. I don't remember who said it. So, but it's not mine. Obviously, it's like what you resist persists, and what you look at moves away. So that's exactly what I was looking at, feeling, because when you're in pain, it's just like, oh, nothing else. You can't think of anything else, so you just focus on the pain. So again, I love that almost that distraction, which is pretty difficult, really, when you're in pain, right? So how did you break that cycle? Initially, I know you've got all the theories, but like straight away, if someone comes to you and says, you know what, I'm in such pain and there's nothing wrong with them physically, how do you break that cycle?
Yeah. Well, it's not easy, and no one who has a therapy can claim that their therapy is 100% effective.
Yes,
You can,
yes.
and it's not easy. Some people are in very severe pain, and the pain is real. We start by caring for people, loving them, listening to them, helping them love themselves and care for themselves.
Mm,
And then when we educate them about how the brain works, so they really understand that the pain is coming from the brain and it's not actually dangerous. And we help them to train their brain out of the pain. For example, if they're having pain with walking, we'll have them imagine walking and just imagine walking with less fear. People can do that, even though it's hard when the pain is there, but they can start to train their brain by imagining walking without fear, and imagining walking with joy, and imagining walking with safety, and imagining walking singing and telling themselves they're okay. And then they want to take 5 steps in that same way, just 5 steps, walking with singing and joy and safety and all these simple techniques of calming the brain. And then 10
mm,
steps, and then 20 steps. And we're training the brain little by little. And eventually the brain will learn, because the brain will turn off those neural circuits that are causing pain when it realizes that it is actually safe. Just like teaching a child that there's no monster in the closet and they can go to sleep.
mm, mm. Yes, and I think we see monsters still as we grow up, right? We're afraid of so many monsters in the form of fear. So it's interesting. Do you do something like? Would you go into like regression therapy, or regression also with the in inverted commas, where you'd go in and do inner child work, for example?
Yeah, we do. And that's part of the emotional awareness and expression therapy work, because frequently the source of where it comes from, as I was saying before, if having a difficult parent, or having divorce, or drug problems in the family, or abuse, or sexual assault, all those things are remembered in the brain as part of the danger signal. And there's a technique called memory reconsolidation. And what that is helping people to go back in time, not to change what actually happened, but to change the memories of what happened, to create new memories where you help your younger self to be strong, to have agency, to stand up, to change the situation, to do whatever needs to be done, and to give that child the love and caring that they didn't actually have then. It sounds pretty silly and kind of woo woo or whatever, but it's actually been shown to be effective. We do it all the time. And we have a randomized controlled trial showing that this model is actually effective for chronic pain.
Mm, mm. I actually love that because in my I'm a coach as well. I'm breakthrough coach, whatever. I often find that when you're working with people, these things just come up anyway. And if you follow it down to the source of the problem, everything seems to change, right, within the life of the person. And it must be beautiful for you to see these transformations on a daily basis, like so constantly. When someone comes back to you and says, Howard, you know what, or Dr. Schubiner, I don't have pain anymore. Oh, how amazing is that for you?
Yeah, yeah, it is very amazing. I sometimes I'll be in bed and I'll get an email, and one of the thank you emails that I get, and I show my wife, and she goes, "That's amazing." She said, "Now don't get too big ahead, Howard." But she's good at helping me with that. But yeah, it's incredibly gratifying. And like I was saying at the beginning, physicians tend not to want to treat people with chronic pain because it can be frustrating and depressing when people don't get better. And there's conflict between the doctor and the patient, about what they want, or the medication or whatever. And you I don't have that in this work. And we're training a lot of doctors, we're training a lot of health coaches, we're training a lot of psychologists and social workers and physical therapists and other people to do this work. And because it doesn't always need a physician, a good coach, a good therapist, a good physical therapist. The other day, I got a letter from a guy who'd been treated for 24 years with pain, back pain and leg pain. And the doctors couldn't help him. And 24 years later, he found a physical therapist who pointed him in our direction, pointed him toward the mind-body connection. And in 6 weeks, he was 90% better after
Wow.
24 years. And he was
Wow.
obviously so grateful. So it's pretty amazing. And these ideas, the funny thing is, it's not funny, but the funny thing is that these ideas are not well known. They're not well accepted. Even when you try to tell people about them, they reject it. They reject it. They think it's all woo-woo or crazy, but this is just neuroscience. It's just how the brain works. And we've got research studies to show that it works. But there's a huge stigma about anything that's stress-related or psychology-related, and people who are in chronic pain often feel dismissed or invalidated or not taken seriously. And after a while, after 5, 10, 20 years, their family is tired of them. Their doctors are tired of them. Their spouses are tired. It's so hard living that way. And then, of course, it tends to get less, and then people tend to get isolated. So we're working against that all the time, against these ideas and the preconceptions and the bias that changing how you think couldn't possibly change chronic pain. But it can.
Yes, and that's why these conversations are so important, because we need to change the bias against mental health. I mean, I know mental health such a broad concept, and I'm just putting that into mental health for now. But and there's such a stigma against it, where people would say, oh, you know what, it's easier to take a tablet because, of course, pharmaceuticals will work. But they're always scared to take it further than, like with you. It's I can make, if we can step over and see there is an end in sight, and you don't have to take the pharmaceuticals or the drugs with all the after effects anyway. And sometimes, and they don't. It's just like a Band-Aid. It does nothing. I mean, how many times I've had friends whose parents have had back surgery, for example, and it's okay for a bit, and then afterwards their back's even worse than before. So I'm really loving this whole alternative. An alternative, I'm also putting in inverted commas, because this whole approach, because when people need to realize that there is another way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sometimes most of the time people come to us at the end of their journey because they're so desperate and they've tried everything else. They've had surgery, they've had injections, they've had medications, they've had physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, Reiki, herbs, vitamins, supplements, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has helped. So, and it's a huge, huge problem. Unfortunately, in the United States, the incentives for doing more intervention are powerful. The financial incentives and the typical way we approach things, with short doctor's visits where people don't have time to be heard, to listen to. Lots of emphasis on procedures, which cost a lot of money and create a lot of income for the doctors, for the hospital, for the insurance companies, etc. And this model that we're talking about, it doesn't pay well, it doesn't make money, it takes time. It's working upstream against the financial incentives in the way that medicine is currently structured in this country.
Mm-hmm. And it's also, I think it's also this instant gratification, where it's, I've got a migraine. Instead of sitting down and figuring out why, it's easy to just grab some drugs, whatever it is, and carry on doing the same thing. And then eventually, at one point, the body wears down, and then the chronic pain comes up. And it becomes worse and worse and worse. So it's very sad that people should be coming to you as a first resort rather than a last resort. But that's again.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying, as I said, we're trying to train as many physicians and other behavioral medicine and healthcare workers as we can, so that they can think of this at the beginning or closer to the beginning, as opposed to at the very end, the very last thing.
Mm.
Because, as I said, with our research study on back pain and headaches and other things, it's easy, relatively easy for a physician to rule out a structural problem. Routine tests, routine x-rays, routine MRI. It's not hard if you interpret them correctly and don't over-interpret the results, for example, the imaging studies, and you listen closely to them. It's very easy to make this assessment and tell people. What's harder is explaining it to them and helping them to, like you say, consider this approach, which is lower cost, less invasive, less side effects than all the other kind of biomedical that can be invasive procedures.
I'd also want to go back. Let's with the MRI, and you were saying how the MRI there's like abnormalities as people get older. It's interesting as well that I think as people, as physicians, I mean, I'm not a physician, I'm just assuming this, right? We assume that the body's the same, the body's the same for everybody. But these MRIs have just proved that that's not so. So, I mean, it's generally the same, right? But it's not really the same if you look at specifics, and if you look at, I mean, nobody can be the same? No one's experienced the same things. So how do you explain that to people? So, I mean, for a physician, he'll look at this and say, okay, there's an abnormality, so obviously we have to do surgery here. Where in fact it's been proved, you proved it, that that's not so. So
yeah, people are not the same in so many ways. I mean, in general, their hearts are the same. The hearts work the same. The livers are the same. The kidneys are the same, for the most part. But, some people have lots of freckles. Some people have dimples. Some people get gray hair at different ages. Some people, their spines are a little crooked. But it turns out crooked spines aren't the cause of pain. But a lot of people have crooked spines. A lot of people have one leg that's longer than the other, or their feet are more flat or less flat or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We've been on this earth for 60,000 years, and, people didn't have pain because of these mild variations. These mild variations are normal variations, and that's what we see on these MRI findings as well, normal variations.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think also I've noticed, just speaking to people, that people have, they accept medical, which they should, I mean, doctors are they're professionals, but they accept what a doctor says to them, and they don't question it.
Yeah.
How would, and it's about realizing that there are different options, and that you as a person have the right to question a doctor. How have you experienced that in your practice? But I think it's a bit different because you're letting people be heard.
Well, we have a nonprofit organization called the PPDA, Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, ppdassociation.org. And this is a nonprofit to educate people and the medical profession about these kinds of disorders. And on the website, there's a questionnaire. And so if people see that their pain turns off when they go on vacation, how can that be a structural problem?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it changed when you went on vacation. Your head didn't change when you went on vacation.
Exactly.
When the pain goes away when you're out with friends and comes back when you're at work, or when the pain shifts from one arm to the other arm, that's not a structural problem. So we're not asking people to take this information on faith. We're asking people to investigate and look closely and look for the signs. And we've published these signs, these questions that people can use. And I've written about it in my books, and we published it in journals now and on the PPDA website. So, people can actually explore that for themselves, and it's usually not that difficult. when they look closely at what's happening, because in a way the brain is sending a message. It's saying, look, the pain's sometimes in the right hand, sometimes in the left hand. And the brain is saying, look, it's me. I'm doing this to you. There's a meaning here. There's a message.
I love that. For me, always I say, there's a meaning, and there's always blessings wherever you look, right? You must just look for them. How do you suggest people get over that fear of actually looking at it? Because again, it's easy to just grab Advil or whatever you do take the pain away, but you have to take a step back and say, maybe I need to look at this, but how do you get over that fear of actually looking at something that probably is a monster, right, in some way?
Yeah, it can be scary. There's no question about it. But that, for people, some people see it immediately and they can understand it, quite quickly. And that's hard. For people who it's very difficult to understand, they're probably going to have to go through a while of other treatments to see if they work. And if they don't work, at some point they're going to say, what have I got to lose? I've got to do something. I'm suffering. And their suffering is real. And we can help, but we can only help when they begin to open their mind to this kind of possibility. And so sometimes it's out of desperation, frankly.
But I suppose that's how we humans work, right? If we won't change a situation until it gets so bad that we're forced to change it. So it's quite interesting, again, like getting out of your comfort zone, for example. Some people would rather live with that pain and take out the drugs, well, not like Advil and whatever, so and just move through it. But then you've also got the side effects of all those things. So people need to become aware that there are alternatives out there.
Yeah, exactly. And not everyone is going to be interested in this kind of work. I understand that, and that's fine. There's a lot of other options. But when the other options don't work, from our point of view, like, what have you got to lose?
Yes.
Yes. It doesn't make sense to me to not even look at an option which has been shown in research studies to be effective. If what we were giving was a pill, it would be on the market. We'd make a lot of money.
Yes, for sure you would. So how do people find you? So if they've got chronic pain, besides Googling you, but if they've got chronic pain and they've heard this, people out there, and they've said, you know what, this is for me, where do they start?
Well, the PPDA is a great place to start, Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, and .org. And that has a listing of practitioners who do this mind-body work in the United States and all around the world. It's got a listing of books, all the different books that have been written. The book is a great place to start. It's got podcasts, links to podcasts where experts and people like me are talking about this work. And the more people are educated about it, the more likely they are to buy into it. A lot of times people get better just by reading the books and doing the exercises in the books without actually seeing a professional even, because it just can work that way. And then some people need to engage the services of a coach, a therapist, a physician, a physical therapist, or whoever.
I suppose it just depends where they're at that stage of their lives in their journey. So, so this is such exciting work, and there's so many possibilities out there. But obviously, we need to get out there more so that people can realize that there is alternatives to surgery, to Advil and all the pharmaceuticals and that kind of thing.
Right.
So tell me, Howard, before we leave, because have you found freedom?
Have I found freedom?
Yes. Have you found freedom?
I was in Denmark and Norway this past fall, and they're the people who are the happiest, people in the world by the standards of surveys or however they determine that. And then when you talk to people there, it's not that they're happy, but they're content. It's not that they're like joyous. The Norwegians are pretty stoic. They're not super outgoing, but they're content. They feel safe and secure. And if you can feel safe and secure in your body, knowing that you're not broken and damaged, that's one area, being safe and secure. If you can be safe and secure in your relationships, that's another, huge advantage that we talked about. If you can feel safe and secure in your work, even though not everything's going to be perfect, not all families are harmonious all the time, not all workplaces are harmonious all the time. Income and expenses go up and down.
Yes.
But if you can find ways of calming yourself and find ways of riding the waves, find ways of being able to be resilient and recognize that things come and things go. And there's a wisdom in that. And a lot of times older people are better at that because they've seen things come and go. And there's a lot of wisdom in getting older that sometimes we don't recognize in our society. And the other thing that makes people happy and content is gratitude.
Yes.
People who are complaining all the time and just looking at what they don't have are going to be unhappy. And, we can't have everything that we want, and everybody doesn't have everything they want. But if we can be grateful for what we have, that's what leads to contentment. That's what leads to happiness. And so these are some of the things that we found that can help people when they're in the throes of pain or anxiety or fatigue or depression or insomnia or just feeling not at ease in their life, in their body.
Yes, I love that. And of course, I have to ask, what about meditation?
Well, meditation is one of the methods that people can use to calm themselves. And I've been a teacher of mindfulness meditation for over 20 years. And I think everyone should learn mindfulness meditation or other forms of meditation as a way of kind of centering, grounding, connecting to themselves. And especially if you use meditation to be grateful, you use meditation to enhance compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for others. And if you use meditation to be aware of what's going on in the moment, realizing that you'll be okay, realizing that this moment is not forever and will pass no matter what's happening. So yeah, it's part of the things that we use in our work.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And gratitude, for sure, has also made a great difference in my life. It's easy to just say, look, wow, look at this beautiful day. How lucky are we? And how lucky are we to have this conversation, right? So that's really beautiful. So thank you for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I could speak to you for another 3 hours because there's just so much, But so thank you, Dr. Schubiner Howard, for being here with me and for accepting this this conversation. I'm really honored that you've been here, and thank you to everybody who's been out here and listened and watched. And if you have any questions, just ask the questions. I'm sure you'd be happy to answer them, right, Howard?
Sure, I'd be happy to help. Send resources if you like.
Oh, thank you. And then, of course, all the links will be up in the description box. So check it out, because if you've got chronic pain, this is a place to start. Don't wait till you've had the surgery. Come here first. So thank you to everybody. This has been wonderful. Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And hopefully we can chat soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And we'll
Bye.
see you soon. Bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye.